I was a park ranger at a national park. I regret it. It all started a few years ago. It was your run-of-the-mill boring shift at the office. I worked the night shifts and our staff was pretty small, so there was usually only one or two other rangers working with me. But on this specific night, I was alone. I yawned and looked at the clock. It read 3 a.m., only a few hours to go. Suddenly, I heard a branch crack outside. Like the paranoid person I was, I instantly tensed up and began to slightly panic. You're being crazy. It's just an animal or something. My paranoia returned twofold once I heard another branch breaking. I knew it was most likely nothing, but I got up and made sure the door was locked. And then I looked out the window, scanning the area for anything suspicious. I took a deep sigh of relief when the answer was affirmative. Upon sitting down, I swore I could hear the faintest footsteps coming from outside the office. So faint that they could have been in the back of my mind. But then they grew louder, and there was no doubt that they were real. The footsteps seemed to be getting louder and closer by the second, and they sounded like no normal animals or humans. I tried to distract myself by playing some games on my computer, but the paranoia was becoming too much to ignore. I jumped when I heard the horrific sound of screeching nails on one of the back office windows. I got up and quickly made my way to the window, only to find a long red scratch mark. My stomach threatened to empty itself at the sight. Usually I like being alone at the night shift, but at this moment I wished I had another coworker with me. I heard another scratching noise, this time coming from the window closest to my desk. I ran out of the room and watched as 5 terrifying nails slowly scratched their way down the window, leaving the same red mark. I spent the next half hour sitting in my chair, shaking and teeming with intense anxiety, hearing the scratching sound every so often. Eventually, I couldn't take it anymore. I got up and looked at the first window. It was totally and utterly covered with red scratch marks. There was absolutely no seeing out of that window. I checked every other window, and it was the same for all of them. I sat back down and looked at the clock. It was now 4 a.m., meaning there was only around an hour until dawn. If I can just wait for the morning shift to arrive, I should be okay. I knew I needed to make myself as comfortable as possible in such a situation. I went to each window and closed the curtains. I then settled down in my chair and tried to distract myself with some random news articles, really the only entertainment I could access on the work computers. I shot up in my seat when I heard a horrific scream coming not too far from the office. I got out of my seat and made sure I had my firearm handy. I walked over to the front and tried to look out the window, examining the surrounding areas. The scream had sounded like someone was in trouble or deeply fearful. I opened the door and embraced the chilly air before venturing into the outside world. I locked the door behind me and clicked on my flashlight and slowly scanned the surrounding area, finding nothing. "Is anyone out here?" I called out. I was met with the same horrific scream as my response, this time sounding much closer. The scream caused me to jump, and my nerves were filled with paranoia. "Hey, are you okay?" I called out shakily. "Help!" I heard an uncanny voice shriek, sending me into a panicked daze. I continued to scan the area with my flashlight, desperately hoping to see what was making these terrifying screams. The hairs on my neck stood up when I felt the gut-wrenching sensation of being breathed upon. I turned around and aimed my flashlight directly behind me, illuminating the cruel imitation of a woman staring right at me. After the initial shock subsided, I booked it back to the ranger's office. I pulled out my set of keys and tried to find the one that would unlock the door. but it wasn't there. I turned around and was met with the scene of the skinwalker tauntingly dangling the key I needed in front of me. Adrenaline surged through my veins. I ran to the side of the office and began to relentlessly pound on the glass window, but it just wouldn't break. I looked behind me once more and saw the skinwalker was now a dozen paces closer. I involuntarily screamed from pure fear and booked it into the forest, not caring where I was going, only caring about putting as much distance between me and this horrific creature as possible. While running, I pulled out my cell phone and crashed when I saw it had no service. I then pulled out my radio and tried to call for backup, but my only response was static. After running for a while, my body gave out from exhaustion. As I lay on the forest ground, pushing as many deep lungfuls of oxygen I could into my lungs, I scanned the area, looking for any sign of the skinwalker. Once I locked eyes with the two eyes staring at me from behind a tree. Adrenaline took over and I was suddenly able to run again. I knew just how long the forest stretched. It would take me a long time to reach the end, and even when I did, it wasn't like anyone would be there waiting to help me. "Please help me," the creature shrieked. Something about its voice was incredibly distressing and inhuman. I picked up my pace twofold, not caring about how scratched up I would be from all the branches and whatnot I was running into at full speed. I tripped over a branch and screamed in pain as my face impacted the ground. I scurried onto my feet and noticed my flashlight was no longer on. I couldn't see anything. I could only hear the sound of the footsteps getting closer and closer. I felt the flashlight and realized that one of the batteries had fallen out during my fall. I bent down and panickedly felt the ground near me, desperately hoping to come across the battery I needed for my most important sense: sight. I decided to cut my losses and leave the flashlight when the footsteps had become too close to ignore. I was now briskly walking through the forest instead of running, my arms out in front of me to feel what was ahead of me. After a long time of venturing in the forest, I had finally made it out. I looked at the dimly moonlit river beneath me, feeling the tiniest bit safer. The tiny sense of safety I felt was ripped away from me once I heard the footsteps. I climbed down and began to run on the river's beach. My body kept threatening to collapse from exhaustion, but I wouldn't let it. I looked behind me while I ran and could now see the skinwalker in greater detail. It had morphed from the uncanny woman into a four-legged beast, charging at me on all fours. I searched through my mind, trying to gather up all of the information I knew about skinwalkers. I had heard of the legends of a skinwalker roaming this park, but I always thought it was just a nonsense fairy tale. I remembered that a way to kill a skinwalker was to state its true identity to it. I now had an idea, but it fell very short. I had no clue what this creature's true identity was, and it was pretty clear I had no way of finding it in the near future. I looked up and felt a small glimpse of hope when I saw the light of the sun slowly creeping up above the mountains. I looked behind me and suddenly noticed that I couldn't see the creature following me anymore. I took a sigh of relief and slowed down my pace slightly, but I didn't dare stop running. I knew that the closest ranger's office was only an hour's walk away. I ran for a while longer and then slowed to a brisk walk due to the exhaustion I had put my body through. After a long and treacherous walk, I could see the other ranger's office in my sight, and the sun had now fully risen. I made it to the ranger's office and attempted to catch my breath. While banging on the door, I heard footsteps shuffle and come my way, and then the door opened, revealing another park ranger looking concerned. "Geez, are you all right?" he asked. "There's something "In the woods," I said between ragged breaths. "I know," the ranger calmly responded. What?" I asked shakily. I said. The ranger started. I watched in complete horror as the ranger slowly morphed into the creature I was familiar with. Before he fully morphed, I took one last look at his badge. His name read, Apache Sioux. "I know." The creature finished, its voice now heavily distorted. I instantly bolted to the river behind me and the creature followed. I didn't know if I could run much longer without passing out. Suddenly I realized that the name on his badge would be a good guess to his true identity. I decided to take the risk. I stopped in my tracks and turned around. Apache Sioux. The creature suddenly seemed startled, and it began to retreat. "Apache Sioux!" I screamed even louder, causing the creature to run away. I began to roar out in maniacal laughter. I had won, or so I thought. Out of nowhere, I heard the deafening sound of what sounded like dozens of thousands of gut-wrenching screams at once. I felt my ears as they throbbed in pain. I heard the sound of trees rustling, and I turned to see the most panic-inducing scene of hundreds of skinwalkers and wendigos running out of all directions of the forest, charging at me. I screamed and ran into the ranger's office, closing and locking the door behind me. I sat down in the chair and began to hyperventilate when the creature started relentlessly banging on all sides of the office. It seemed like no end was near except the end of my life. "Shit, shit, shit," I screamed in a frustrated and fearful tone. The skinwalkers and wendigos began to tear down pieces of the building one by one, causing me to slowly retreat into the center of the room until the building was almost entirely destroyed. The next few minutes were a horror-filled daze. The creatures were slowly removing the last pieces of building, as if to taunt me. I swear I even heard a few of them snicker. I didn't know much about these legendary creatures, so I figured it would be a good idea to commit the most destructive act I could think of: a fire. As a park ranger, I had some decent experience of knowing how to make a fire with nothing except a rock and steel. I began to search through what was left of the office, and a pocket knife, oh so tantalizing, caught my eye. I ran for the pocket knife, but the creatures must have known what I was attempting, so they jumped off and attacked me. It was pure agony, and I literally felt like I had been transported to hell. Each of the creatures mercilessly tortured me, but my brain blocked out the pain the best it could and focused on the one thing that mattered in that moment: creating a fire. I grabbed the pocket knife, flipped it open, and rubbed a rock against it. I saw sparks forming, and my eyes widened with hope. I tried and tried again, until eventually one of the sparks caught the wood, and fire began to slowly but surely envelope the building. The creatures all shrieked and slowly retreated from the growing flame, and so did I. Some of the creatures had already been caught in the fire and were too far gone already. Only a handful survived, and they all decided to run into the forest. I pressed my radio and explained that a fire had erupted and that it was spreading fast. I ran down to the river, thinking it would give me the best chance of protection from this fire. I jumped into the river and struggled immensely as the current tried to pull me into its wrath. But I swam and swam until I was on the other side. I collapsed on the ground and took in deep lungfuls of oxygen, feeling victorious but also defeated at the same time. I looked back and saw that my radio was floating down the heavy current. I cursed at myself and got up. I decided to cut my losses and move on. I needed to find the nearest ranger office to alert them of the fire before it got too bad. I walked into the forest and was instantly enveloped with paranoia. I felt like I was being watched with a million taunting eyes, waiting for me with pure rage after what I had just done. I stopped in my tracks and looked around, examining every single piece of every tree, trying to ease my paranoia. Just as I was about to let my guard down, I saw two unblinking and menacing eyes staring directly at me from behind a tree. At first, I froze in complete fear and shock, but just as soon after I was running for my life once again, giving me a strong sense of unpleasant déjà vu. I didn't know much about this part of the park, but I assumed this forest didn't go on for that long. After hours of walking, I'd proven my assumption incorrect. This forest seemed to be going on forever, and I could smell the nasty smell of smoke growing more pungent. Finally, I noticed the trees becoming less close to each other, and before I knew it, I was out of the forest. I made it to the office and explained the fire situation to the officers there, but not bothering to explain the skinwalker situation to them. I knew they would just think it was insane nonsense. Anyways, I eventually made it home safely, but I quit my job very shortly after that, and I still have nightmares about those creatures to this day. Why I quit my job as a park ranger. Hello, everybody. My name is Denver Dark. I'm 19 years old, fresh out of high school, working as a park ranger at Caledon State Park in Virginia. My job is pretty easy. I don't usually patrol the park. My job is to sit in a radio room and wait for people to call in if they need assistance. This can range from someone needing the bathroom door unlocked to a drunken fight. A couple of months ago, though, I had an encounter with some type of creature, or maybe even an alien, I'm not sure at this point. This forever scarred me, and I will always be paranoid of the forest. It was a normal evening at the park. I looked over at the clock on my desk as it clicked over to 6 p.m. Well, here goes to another night by myself, I said out loud as I saw all of the other park rangers packing up to leave. Another hour passed, and as I was eating my dinner, static started coming through the radio. After a couple of seconds of just the static, a girl's voice started to come through. Hello? Hello? Is anyone there? I paused for a second after chewing another bite of my food. I'd never heard anything like this over the radio before, so I picked it up. Hello, this is Officer Dark here. Yes, she yelled before continuing her sentence. Please help me. Something is chasing me. I was dumbfounded. The creepy part was she didn't say someone. She said something. I quickly calmed myself before responding. Calm down, miss. Tell me where you are so I can send help out immediately. I'm at the old watchtower on the northeast side of the park. I ran here after it chased me out of my cabin. Please send help. I think it's close. It's all right, miss. I'll send help out immediately. I was cut off by her. Shh. I stopped talking, listening to the radio. Then I heard a very soft but aggressive growl come from the speaker. Oh God, it's here. As she finished her sentence, I heard a crash of a window and a large thud on a wood floor. The radio cut out. I was in complete shock. Did I just witness someone die? After about a minute of me being absolutely glued to my seat with terror, I started to gather a plan in my head. I spun around in my chair and grabbed the old park map off of the desk next to me. I unfolded it, frantically scanning it, looking for an old watchtower. There it was on the northeast side of the park, just like she said. To the looks of it, it would take me about an hour to walk there. I got up from my chair and walked over to the gun cabinet, unlocking it with the keys I had in my pocket. I grabbed the first gun I saw, a 12-gauge shotgun along with some extra shells. I also saw the flare gun on the top shelf and decided to take that too. Before leaving the station, I made sure that I had everything that I needed. Shotgun, flare gun, flashlight, radio, pocket knife, and the map. I'm not gonna lie, I was scared to go out into the woods after that whole event. I also hated the idea of being alone, but I knew I couldn't just sit there and do nothing. As I exited the station, I was greeted by the cool breeze and a beautiful sunset of a summer evening. All of the night bugs and animals started to come out. I could hear the call-in of the cicadas in the trees, while the crickets buzzed below them on the ground. It's weird because you wouldn't think that such a breathtaking scene could hold such horror that the lady experienced. Since it was a long walk, I started moving at a faster pace than I normally would. As I was about 10 minutes away from the tower, everything changed. Once an amazing sunset now turned the forest into a pitch black that no person could see into, along with the deafening sound of silence as the cicadas and crickets stopped chatting. This was extremely odd. I'd been in this forest many times at night, and nothing like this had ever happened. A few more minutes of walking later, and I saw the old watchtower. It was about 70 feet tall or so, with a hut at the top of it. The watchtower had seen its better days. The wood looked very old, with it being damp and cracked in many spots. At this point, I was at the base of the tower. Right before I was about to go up on the first step, I got the worst feeling I have ever felt. My head started to spin. I was very nauseous and started to see stars. As this continued, I thought I was going to pass out. As the darkness around my eyeballs started to grow, everything stopped. I was normal again. Except for one feeling, it felt like something was staring at me. I swear I could feel its eyes piercing into the back of my head. Its glare almost felt sharp, like a knife had been jammed into my side. I spun around as quickly as I could, holding the shotgun in front of me. Nothing. There's nothing, I thought. Until I scanned the tree line in front of me about 50 or so feet out. Oh my gosh, I let out as I see deep in the forest. A pair of two vibrant green eyes staring at me. I was struck with fear. My eyes not being able to leave the sight, my feet almost cemented in the ground. After about a minute of me staring at it, it winked at me. It winked at me. After this, the eyes disappeared and went back into the brush. I didn't know what to think. The only thing that I knew was not to stay in that spot. I ran up the old wooden stairs as fast as I could. But then I remembered the radio call I'd gotten earlier. I prepared myself for a bloody scene. But when I reached the top of the steps, the hut was empty. No blood, no body, no lady. The most disturbing thing of all, though, was it looked like this place hasn't been touched in years. The floors and desk in the room were both completely covered in cobwebs and dust. A large radio sat on the desk. It must have been the one that came through to mine. But that too was engulfed by the webs. Something very strange is happening. I just couldn't figure it out. On the edge of the desk was a stack of very old newspapers. My curiosity took over and I picked one up. Date, 1978. Headline, Woman attacked and killed by the Wampus cat, locals say. This didn't make any sense. This couldn't be the same lady I just contacted. I needed to find out more, so I kept on reading. The next thing that I read sent shivers down my spine. The Wampus cat resembles a very large black panther, most known for their very bright green eyes. My blood ran cold. I needed to get out of this place right now, right as I shoved the newspaper into my pocket and was ready to run. It was too late. Before I could turn around, I heard a sound. That same damn bone-chilling growl I had heard on the radio. I turned around as fast as I could, raising my shotgun. There it was, the beast itself. The Wampus cat. This cat was massive, quite possibly the biggest mammal I had ever seen. It stood on all fours at a staggering height of at least 8 feet tall. It had deep old scars all over its body, probably from people like me. Its paws were the size of small dinner plates, and didn't forget its face. The lips were completely barred back, showing its dinner knife-like fangs. And the most important thing of all, those dang green eyes, almost staring into my soul. I didn't waste any time and pulled the trigger, sending a slug at my target. I landed the shot, but it barely did anything. The cat staggered back when the slug hit him. But that's about it. How is this thing still alive? The round had left a bloody hole in its torso about the size of a dollar coin. But alas, the creature was pretty much unfazed. I decided to run for it, booking it to the exit, only to be stopped by the huge feline pouncing on my back and pinning me to the wood floor. The beast raked its long claws across my back, leaving an extremely painful wound. It felt like I was being burned with a hot iron. I could feel my shirt already being soaked with blood. I managed to flip around on my back to face the beast, holding its head away from my face. Although I was able to keep its head at bay, I wasn't with the paws. It started swiping at my face, leaving those searing claw marks on me again. I tried to reach for the shotgun on the ground next to me, but I wasn't able to. Blood from the gashes started to seep into my eyes, stinging them, not allowing me to see. With nothing working and all of the blood I was losing, I started to give up. There was no point, I couldn't overpower this thing. And right when I was about to give in, thinking about all of my friends and the family, an idea sparked into my head. I reached in my pocket and pulled out the knife I'd forgotten about. I flipped the blade open and immediately stabbed the cat in the neck with it. The beast reared back in pain, leaping off of me. This was my only chance to escape. I quickly got up and snatched the shotgun before sprinting down the stairs. I had a head start, but the cat was catching up. As I reached the bottom, it was already halfway down. I didn't have any time to spare. I ran immediately to the trails, not looking behind me. I could hear the big, heavy footsteps of the beast on my tail end. I knew eventually it was going to catch up, so I turned around, pumping 2 more slugs in it, staggering it again. I could tell it was hurt, because it was moving a lot slower. I fired again in its direction, landing another shot with a bloody splat. Then the cat stopped running, turning around and slowly jogging the other direction. It finally gave up. This didn't stop me from sprinting back to the station. I used every bit of strength and willpower to make it back. As I busted through the door of the building, the biggest wave of relief came over me. I had won. I had beaten that thing. After attending to my wounds and grabbing a glass of water, I sat down in my desk chair, thankful to be alive. While reaching into my pocket to take out my phone, I felt paper. The newspaper. I pulled it out, scanning the article once again, realizing that I missed something before. The woman's body was found in the watchtower of Caledon State Park, her body being mutilated, even missing some of her limbs. Even though she was killed, many of the people in the park say they can still hear her calling for help, just like that same night she was murdered. I was completely shook. I didn't know what to think. Was it a ghost or maybe a spirit? And right as I put the newspaper down, the radio buzzed, playing that same voice that started this all. "Hello,